Cody Rhodes says he sees CM Punk returning to WWE before debuting in AEW. We talk about it next on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. Hello and welcome to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. This is Ralph Valenti. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications as we're trying to hit 10,000 YouTube subscribers before All Elite Wrestling's All Out. And we know that All Out is going to be happening in Chicago. We know that CM Punk is going to be at StarCast. We've had several episodes recently talking about CM Punk. He is obviously one of the hot topics in All Elite Wrestling right now. And it looks like the news just continue. CM Punk recently interviewed with ESPN talking about the rumored return to AEW. He basically shot that down. He talks about WWE. He talks about just returning in wrestling in general. And he talks about how Cody texted him an offer to AEW, and he says that's just not how you do business. Cody was asked about the same thing on Twitter recently, and he said on Twitter, I think he was misquoted. I know one of us had met with him in person, and yes, I texted him plenty when we couldn't connect on the actual phone, but a contracted offer, I wouldn't, but not a contracted offer. I wouldn't be surprised if he went back to WWE. Regardless, great wrestler and guy, the door is open if he wants it. How do you take this information that we see from Cody and the interview that we recently had with CM Punk and ESPN?
Well, I think the interview with CM Punk was certainly revealing. It revealed a lot of things. One probably most notably is that he's at ease with the whole situation with WWE. He said that he's a different person. The whole thing with WWE is behind him. We also found out that he talked to Cody via text or however they ended up discussing as recently as a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
So that leads me to believe that there is some sort of interest, obviously, from All Elite Wrestling's perspective, which we've known for quite some time, whether it was Tony Khan making comments, Cody talking about it.
Even the Young Bucks.
The Young Bucks. So there's something there. They're going to at least try to entertain the idea of bringing him into AEW, and rightfully so. You know, I think it would be beneficial for them. Now, obviously, the big thing is if he's going to actually sign with them, or is he more likely to go back to WWE like Cody Rhodes would suggest? At the end of the day, I'm still convinced that AEW would be where he goes. Okay, so, it's tough because it's like, well, think back to the things that always motivated him. When he was in WWE, the one thing he wanted was to main event WrestleMania.
Right.
If Vince comes to him or somebody comes to him at this point in his career or his life where he's essentially at ease with whatever happened with WWE previously and says to him, look, here's the contract, here's who you're going to face, there's all this money, you're going to main event WrestleMania.
I think he would sign it.
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. Like, where's his mindset for the business? Does he want to be a part of All Elite Wrestling where it seems like they're really going to be this new, fresh company that's going to try to change the industry, or does he want to go back to WWE and try to accomplish the one thing he's always wanted that kind of avoided him his entire career there?
Right.
You know, so that's kind of where we're at. I'm still convinced that AEW would be the better fit for him.
Yeah.
And that's just based on the direction of the WWE, where they are now, where they're going. The fact that it seems like, you know, whether you look at some of their finances or just the general feeling of WWE, people are very down on the product.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas AEW right now, getting television and obviously selling out all of the bigger shows that they've done to this point, that's a big deal. So does he want to be a part of AEW and kind of be a part of that revolution, if you want to call it that, whatever you want to put whatever name you want to put on it, or does he want to go back to WWE if it's offered? The offer
Right.
probably isn't even there, but assuming that does happen, he'd have to choose.
He definitely would have to choose. And, you know, it's funny how he hasn't been in a ring in 5 years, and yet he's still one of the most talked about wrestlers.
Yep.
He's still considered the hottest free agent in the business. And now where it seemed like the last 4 years, it was just people just trying to throw rumors out there, trying to clickbait people on watching their videos and read their articles. But now it seems like now more than ever, this return is imminent. The question is, where does he go? If you read the interview that he did with ESPN, he does mention something about why he chose to be a part of StarCast. And it was an easy answer. It's in Chicago.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to travel. It's in his backyard. He could just walk there. So that's a big indication of where I think his plans could be if he does decide to come back to wrestling, where he goes. Because one thing that WWE does more than anybody in any wrestling profession is they travel a lot.
Yep.
You know, the top guys are traveling 300 days a year, having over 200 plus matches a year. So I don't know at his age he wants to do something like that. Now, then again, we have someone like Brock Lesnar who shows up, 10, 12 times a year, doesn't do the house show circuit, does very few Raws, never on SmackDown, and only defends the title on pay-per-views when Vince feels like he needs them. Whether that's one of the big four, one where he feels ticket sales are down, he'll bring them in to get ticket sales. Maybe Punk can have that kind of agreement with Vince and Triple H to do that if he comes back to WWE. But AEW, on the other hand, it's everything that he believed in back in 2014 when he left. Like, these are guys that probably would not get a chance at WWE that are able to get exposure, recognition in a mainstream audience that he felt he never really had, although you could say the argument that he did. He was a top guy before he left. So I would also say that AEW is the better move for him. But for a guy that is openly admitting he does not want to travel, wrestling requires traveling, regardless of how many dates you do. So either way, I think whatever agreement he makes with either AEW or WWE, he's going to have to do it on a limited schedule. And the question is, who's willing to do that?
Yeah.
I think Vince is more likely to do that than Tony Khan, personally.
I disagree with that because, I mean, Tony Khan has come out and said that the guys you're not going to see their top guys all the time. It's not like you're going to go to a house show and see your Jerichos at every house show or Omega or whoever.
True.
It's not like they're going to have seasons where there's a particular season time where these guys will have X amount of days off because it's the fall or whatever the case may be.
There was a recent article that I read, I believe Wrestling Inc. Wrote it, but it was from Wrestling Observer Newsletter reported originally, where they were talking about how the schedule is going to work. And it seems like they're going to do their live tapings on Wednesdays and then do house shows on Saturday nights. And I would assume the pay-per-views would also be Saturday nights when there's no house show. So 2 days of the week, where even if CM Punk doesn't do a lot of those house shows, I mean, that is more likely he could do even just the Wednesdays, but does he have to be on every Wednesday? I think at first, if he goes to AEW when he's first there, he might have to be on every Wednesday to help with those ratings at first. After that,
it certainly would help.
But, you know, once they got to build more stars. But if they're going to get a guy like CM Punk, that might stifle the build to some of these guys like MJF, like Jungle Boy, Luchasaurus, you know?
I mean, yes and no. You need top guys like Chris Jericho's and CM Punk's and guys of that nature that have been around the block, John Moxley, recognizable names, because that's when a fan who may have watched WWE or used to watch WWE, when they see that, they're instantly going to be attracted to it. You know, it's kind of like, oh, wait a minute. I remember him from back when, and now he's there, and what's his product? Like, they don't necessarily need them in the sense of what their goals that they're trying to achieve. Like, they want to try and create a good young roster with these younger independent guys from the independent scene.
Right.
I get all that, but you also need top guys for them to beat to help help them get established. And you also need those top guys like your Jerichos and all the guys I just mentioned so you can get eyeballs to your screen. If you take out your Moxleys, if you take out Jericho, and suppose CM Punk goes there just for the sake of the argument, you're left with Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks.
Right.
Probably as your top guys, and Cody Rhodes. You can count him. To the average individual who, one, doesn't watch wrestling or only watch WWE, you may not know who those people are. And that's not meant to be an insult to them. It's just they attract the more hardcore fan, the fans that used to watch New Japan Pro Wrestling, or still do, that have followed them throughout the entirety of this whole kind of movement. You watched All In. Not every wrestling fan knows who those guys are. So in order to establish AEW as a legitimate wrestling company, I feel like you need top guys like that, and you need those guys not only to bring eyes to the screen, but to establish your good younger talent that you're trying to promote.
Right. No, I totally agree with that there. So at the end of the day, we get to August 31st. We've already talked about whether or not he would debut at All In. We did our what ifs if he shows up, his first feuds, all that. We have plenty of videos on that. We'll put them in the descriptions below. So on a percentage, how likely do you think CM Punk will be involved in the wrestling business after StarCast?
Are we talking short-term, long-term?
Just some involvement in wrestling outside of after he's done with StarCast.
I'm going to say 30%. I'm going to say there's a 30% chance. I wasn't convinced that he's going to show up at All Out based on the interview that he did. Right. Now, certainly you can point to certain things. You can say he's doing StarCast. You can kind of read his words and say, all right, well, we know that he's been in negotiations or at least talked to the Bucks or whoever he's been talking to. They've been trying to get him under contract or making offers, whether it's through text or in person, however it's been done. There's some level of interest, obviously, from the guys at All Elite Wrestling.
Right.
That interview that he did with ESPN, while I feel like it's more likely that he's at ease with anything that has happened to him previously in the WWE, I'm still not convinced that he's going to go back to either the WWE or AEW. And the reason I say that is he seems very content with where he is in his life right now. Yes. You know, he's got his contract. He's under contract for the UFC. I don't know if he's going to fight again, but he said in that interview that they obviously made him pee in a cup, so that means he's still getting drug tested, so he's still under contract for that. He recently competed maybe a month or a couple months ago in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament, so there's that too. And he's doing commentary, so he's still under contract with the UFC.
Plus, he's acting too.
Even if it's to the point where if you go to him and you say, all right, what motivated you about wrestling? And it was the reaction you get from the fans. He can get that in the MMA community. Like, he's still a big name.
Yes.
So it's not like he has to go back to wrestling, because sometimes you listen to these guys who come back after a long hiatus and they're like, you know, I miss the fans. I miss the feel of it. I miss the energy. He can get that in MMA. He can get that from the UFC. He can get that from his commentary.
He can get that just from showing up to things like StarCast.
Exactly. So I don't know. I'm not convinced he wants to wrestle. Maybe he shows up at AEW. And if he doesn't show up in AEW at all, maybe he shows up in 3 more years at a WrestleMania.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 30% chance.
I'm going to say 50%. He's already there at StarCast. So I feel like that day before the show, Cody, the Bucks, and Tony are going to put him in a room before or after his appearance and say, listen, tell us the terms you want. We're going to give it to you. At that point, CM Punk could say, there's nothing that could bring me back, or, all right, here are my terms.
And the number one villain of AEW right now, Jim Cornette, said the same thing. He said, if you're Tony Khan, no matter how much money he wants, you go and you give it to him and you get him into your company.
Right. Now, I'm just saying involved in wrestling. So that doesn't necessarily mean he has to come back to the ring and wrestle. Obviously, everybody would love to see that, but obviously he likes commentary. One thing that AEW probably is weak in right now, of anything, is their commentary.
Yeah, they're probably searching for that third guy. So Jim Ross has been pretty good.
He's been okay.
Excalibur's been consistently getting better as the shows have gone on, so he's been good.
Right.
But they're kind of looking for that third guy.
Right. So if they could get a CM Punk to be, a guy that has the in-ring experience and just so good at what he does, speaking wise, where he could be even if he could be a heel commentator, that works too.
Yep.
So
that's worked in the past. I mean, look at NXT with Nigel McGuinness.
Yeah,
he's great. I think he's great.
Yeah, Morrow and Nigel are a great duo together, and I know they use the third people, whether it's Percy Watson, I know he just left, or Beth Phoenix, or whoever. They use 3-man, but CM Punk, I think whatever he does, I think he would be a great addition to wherever he goes. If that's commentary, if that's in ring, even if it's just where he's like Tully Blanchard managing somebody. I bet you someone that probably doesn't have the greatest mic skills and CM Punk comes in to be his manager and his mouthpiece, that could be, the next Heyman, possibly.
He could step if they tried to do something with him like that. I mean, it's certainly, if they have him be a manager or a coach, so to speak, and then eventually tensions happen and he has a one-off match, I think most people would be okay with that. I mean, I don't know if it's to the point where he wants to be on the road day in, day out and really getting back into the wrestling scene like that. Whatever he ends up doing, whether it's AEW, WWE, somewhere down the road, I think it's more likely we see it in more of like a one-off thing than a, continuous wrestling.
I think deep down, CM Punk feels like his story should not have ended with Kane eliminating him in the Royal Rumble 2014. I think even he feels there should be something else that finishes that story, whether it's a one-off with Omega, a one-off with Moxley. Heck, he goes to WrestleMania main events against Brock Lesnar, anything.
I mean, even if you think of it this way, you got to think, if he's willing to accept it, he's going to go in the WWE Hall of Fame.
Yes.
He's a shoo-in for that, I'd imagine.
I would
think
so.
At the very least. The one thing that Vince McMahon has always done is open his arms back up to people who he hasn't necessarily gotten along with. He's done it with just about everybody minus Randy Savage. So Ultimate Warriors, Steve Austin literally walked out on the company. He welcomed him back with open arms.
Bret Hart.
I mean, it's just what he does. So I got to think the door is open for the WWE if he's willing to do that and he wants to close a certain chapter on his life, because he always talks about not wanting to have regrets. So he's either truly at peace with his wrestling career and he's like, okay, I'm done. I don't need to go back to it. He's grown out of it. Maybe he just lost his passion for it.
Could be.
He's moving on to the next stage of his life. Or maybe he's saying, okay, like you said, maybe he doesn't want it to end like that. Maybe there's one last thing he wants to accomplish. And, it's not like he's getting any younger. So we'll see how big AEW is, how established they become. And if he ends up going there, that'd be great. But if he decides to go back for one more run with WWE and like a WrestleMania match, I think that's likely too.
Right. So let us know what you think in the comments below. Where do you see CM Punk ending up if he returns to wrestling, AEW or WWE? Let us know in the comments below. Share this all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPB Podcast. Subscribe, hit that bell for notifications as we're trying to hit 10,000 YouTube subscribers before All Elite Wrestling's all out. For Ralph Valenti, my name is Michael Valenti. Thank you for watching the Squared Circle Psychobabble.